Hey guys, it's Caleb with some Red Knot. Today I have a book called If Looks Could Kill by Kate White. The cover is basically like a box of chocolates, and there's a little skull and crossbone on one of the pieces of chocolate, and on the box it says A Bailey Wiggins Mystery. So that's kind of cute, I guess, for like a little mystery book. At least it sort of makes sense, but I don't know. With a title like Looks Could Kill, you would think they'd have like a hot chick or something on it. You know, even if like her face is in shadow or she's being hanged or something. I think the Savannah Ride books do it a little better because at least the theme of the story, the title of the book, which is usually food based in a Savannah Ride mystery, they always have the cover match the theme, with the exception of, I forget what this one book title was for the Savannah Ride mystery, but it was just a chick, like a faceless chick with hiding chocolates behind her back. And I'm just like, that's not a very good cover. But otherwise, the covers for Savannah Ride usually are good and match the title of the story. This doesn't really, but whatever. If it's a good book, I don't care. This is hardcover, so there's really nothing to read on the back but like, your generic praise. Probably read the inside cover here in a minute. But hopefully this will be good, and I'm not going to rage like I have over the sailing mysteries. So let's see, what does it say on the back? Advanced praise for Kate White's If Looks Could Kill. Yes, advanced praise, meaning we paid you money to write a message about how great this book is, even though you haven't read it. Good job. In If Looks Could Kill, Sex and the City meets the murder mystery and Bailey Wiggins. Sex and the City meets the murder mystery, and Bailey Wiggins is a sleuth a girl could okay. Wow, this is written strangely, and so I'm having difficulty reading it. Is a sleuth a girl could love, gutsy, savvy, and even self-confessed shoe slut. Okay. Kate White writes with style and an insider's dishiness on the magazine world. What wicked fun. Lisa Scottoline, author of Courting Trouble. And then there's a cool little crossbones. Sharpen your talons before you turn the pages of Kate White's wonderful new book. You know, because apparently they needed to make sure you understand that they're talking about this book. This novel, drama quotes, peeks between the lines of America's glossiest magazines from the very top of the masthead to offer a deliciously deadly glimpse at an insider's world of fashion and style. Linda Fairstein, author of The Dead House. If Looks Could Kill is a stunning, self-assured debut. Miss White treats the reader to the inside scoop on the politics of magazine publishing and fills her marvelously written whodunit with so many twists and turns that I was kept guessing to the end. Bravo. Or in this case, brava. Diane Mott Davidson, author of Sticks and Stones. So apparently this is a murder mystery about people in the magazine industry. Let's see. Alright, the inside cover, because like I said, it is hardback. I was lying under the covers with Kassie, hoping I wouldn't do anything to mess up the delicate ecosystem of the moment. All it would take was the wrong remark from me, a suggestion that we plan a weekend at a charming inn in the Berkshires, and he'd burn rubber on his way out the door. Then the phone rang. Then maybe you should dump him, because that doesn't sound like a guy you'd want to date. Meet Bailey Wiggins, the 30-something single-again true crime writer for a leading Manhattan woman's magazine. Smart and savvy, she's got a sixth sense when it comes to seeing the truth in a story, especially if it's murder. Title drop! Bailey's in bed with her commitment-challenged lover, Kassie, when she gets a frantic call from her high-maintenance boss at Gloss magazine. Grabbing coffee in a cab outside her Greenwich Village apartment, the consolation prize in her divorce settlement, Bailey reluctantly heads down. At Cat Jones' Upper East Side townhouse, she finds something that seriously clashes with the chic decor. The dead body of the family's live-in nanny. Oh, it's one of those stories. As Bailey unofficially delves into the murder girl's past, she finds no shortage of A-list suspects. But when a startling discovery suggests that Cat may have been the intended victim, Bailey is suddenly up to her bedhead in a high-profile investigation that's perfect fodder for a tabloid headliner. Is someone trying to kill the editor of Women's Magazine? Magazines, my bad. See, now you have something that the Sailing Mysteries lacked. Or at least in the previous book. In the Sailing Mysteries, the main character had no reason or purpose to get involved. She just did because she's an idiot. There's no rhyme or proper reason for her to get involved in this. We're given sort of a reason, maybe about two, that could make sense to why she'd want to go and investigate, her being a paramedic, and then her actually maybe owing a favor, or feel like she owes a favor to her boss at the marina, but it's done so poorly that it's just more like afterthoughts and hearsay. Just something she says to glorify herself, nothing that anyone else really comments on to solidify the fact that she's done those things. Here, we have somebody who works for entertainment purposes. They write magazine articles. What do people who write magazine articles do? They go and they try to get a hold of every little juicy tidbit, no matter how sordid or awful or untruthful it is. And they make a story out of it and they publish it. Because if they get noticed, they get bigger stories. If they get bigger stories and become popular, they get a bigger paycheck and more notoriety. So it would make sense she'd start poking her nose where things don't belong. So if the cat will kindly get off my leg. So let's see. Flipping to the back cover. With the spotlight on New York's glitzy media world, Bailey interviews backstabbing editors, straying husbands, and one sexy 6'2" psychologist who can make her decide to kick Kassie to the curb. As you should, if a romantic weekend is going to send him out the door. Because you shouldn't be dating him. Anyway. Sporting her pair of red slingbacks, I don't know what that is, but I'm guessing that's some high heels, and armed with the investigative skills she's honed as a true crime reporter, she sets out on a search that takes her from Manhattan's exclusive Carnegie Hill area, The nanny heartland of America. The nanny heartland of America? For those who know more than me, is this really a thing? To the ritzy weekend estates of Pennsylvania and Connecticut. Bailey will need all her street smarts and some lightning-fast detective work to catch a killer who could end up deleting her name from the masthead for good. A novel that marks the debut of a sexy and wickedly entertaining new mystery series, If Looks Could Kill. Introduces a heroine whose blend of wry humor and gutsiness will win over readers everywhere. Some tidbits about the author. Kate White is the editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine. Okay, so she knows what she should know what she's talking about when it comes to magazine stuff. She is also the author of the Business Week bestseller, Why Good Girls Don't Get Ahead, but Gutsy Girls Do, and 9 Secrets of Women Who Get Everything They Want. Miss White lives in New York City and can be reached at her address, which I will, put in the description for anybody who might want to email her or go to her website or whatever she has at her website, and if her website is still up. And I assume it would be if she's still working in the magazine industry and writing novels. So it looks like my cat is interested in this book, so I shall read for the cat as well. Let's get to the first chapter. Dedication page. If I could turn the pages. Come on. Come on, page. Turn. Acknowledgements. Come on, pages. There we go. Cat Jones was the kind of woman who not only got everything in the world that she wanted, in her case a fabulous job as editor-in-chief of one of the biggest women's magazines, a gorgeous townhouse in Manhattan, and a hot-looking husband with a big career of his own. But over the years also managed to get plenty of what other women wanted, like their fabulous jobs and their hot-looking husbands. It was hard not to hate her. So when her perfect world began to unravel, I might have been tempted to turn my face into my pillow at night and go, hee hee hee. Wow, you're a dick. But I didn't. I took no pleasure in her misery, as I'm sure plenty of other people did. And instead, I jetted to her rescue. Why? Because she helped pay my bills, because she was my friend in a weird sort of way, and most of all because as a writer of true crime articles, I've always been sucked in by stories that start with a corpse and lead to crushing heartache. There's no way I could forget the moment when all the Strum und Drang began. It was just after 8 on a Saturday morning, a Sunday in early May. I was lying under the covers of my queen-size bed in a spoon position with 34-year-old Kyle Connor McCorgren Congay. Wow, I just failed at pronouncing that. McConaughey. Investment banker and selling fanatic. Oh God, no. Feeling him growing. Okay, it's sure. Feeling him growing hard and hoping I wouldn't do anything to mess up the delicate ecosystem of the moment. It was our 6th date and only the 2nd time we'd been to bed. And though dinner had been nice and last night's sex had been even better than the first time, I had a pit in my stomach, the kind that develops when you find yourself gaga over a guy you've begun to sense is as skittish as an alpine goat. Okay. All it would take was the wrong remark from me, a suggestion, for instance, that we planned a weekend in a charming inn in the Berkshires, and he'd burn rubber on his way out the door. The phone rang just as I felt his hand close around my right breast. I glanced instinctively at the clock. God, it was only 8:09. The machine would pick it up, regardless of what idiot had decided to call it this hour. It was too early for my mother, taripsing around Tuscany, and too late for old boyfriends who did their drunk dialing at 2 a.m. from payphones in bars below 14th Street. Maybe it was the super. It would be just like him to get in touch at this hour with some pathetic complaint, like my bike was leaning up against the wrong wall in the basement. Do you need to get that? Kassie asked, his hand pausing in his pursuit. The machine will, I said, and I remembered. I wondered to turn the volume all the way down. The fourth ring was cut off abruptly, and a woman's voice came booming into the room from the small office directly across from my bedroom. No, I hadn't. Bailey? Bailey? Pick up if you're there. It's Kat. I need your help. Bailey, are you there? I moaned. I better grab this, I said, wiggling out from under the white comforter. I propped myself up on my elbow and reached for the phone on the bedside table. Hi, I said, clearing my throat. I'm here. Oh, thank God, Cat Jones said. Look, something's wrong here and I'm going insane. I need your help. Okay, tell me, I said calmly. If I wasn't responding with a huge degree of concern, it was because I'd known Cat Jones for 7 years, and I'd seen her freak when the dry cleaners pressed the seams wrong in her pants. It's my nanny, you know, Heidi? I'm gonna say Heidi. This one quit too? Please don't be funny, there's something the matter. She won't answer the door down in her apartment. You sure she's there? Yes, I talked to her yesterday and she promised to be here this morning. I'm not gonna say that. It's only 8 o'clock, Kat, I protested. She's probably dead asleep, or she's got a guy with her and she's embarrassed to answer the door. Casey's hand, which had been fondling my breast only seconds ago, had now lost much of its enthusiasm. But she's never just ignored me, Kat said. Of course not. Few people would have the nerve to do that. Maybe she's not even in there. Maybe she spent the night at somebody else's place. She said she was staying in last night. I've got a bad feeling about this. Can't you let yourself in? You've got a key, right? I'm scared to go in alone. What if there's something the matter in there? Well, what about Jeff? I asked, referring to her husband. He's up in the country for the week with Tyler. I had something to do here, she added almost defensively. And there's no one closer, a neighbor? No one I trust. She paused then in that famous way of hers, which had started out as a trick to make people rush to fill the void, and divulged their most sacred secrets to her, but which now had become kind of unintentional mannerism, the way some people bite the side of their thumb as they think. I waited her out, listening to the sound of Casey's breathing. Bailey, you've got to come up here, she said finally. Now? I exclaimed. Kat, it's 8:11 on a Sunday morning. Why not wait a bit longer? I bet she spent the night at some guy's place, and she's trying to flag down a cab right now. But what if that's not the case? What if something happened to her in there? What are you suggesting? That she's passed out from a bender, or she's hung herself from the doorframe? No, I don't know. It just seems weird, and I'm scared. I could see now that this was bigger than a dry cleaning snafu. Really, we put snafu in there? That she had her knickers? You're American. Why are you using British terms? Whatever. In a twist, and was serious about wanting me there, uptown on 91st Street. Now, Okay, I said. It's going to take me at least 30 minutes to get dressed and get up there. Just hurry, all right? She hung up the phone without even saying goodbye. By now, there didn't seem to be much lust left in my dashing Lothario? Lothario. He'd let his hand slip away and had rolled from the spoon position onto his back. I'd once heard someone say that Cat Jones was so intimidating that she had made some of the men she went to bed with temporarily impotent. But even I, who had never underestimated her, was impressed that she managed to do that from about 80 blocks to a man I was in bed with, and I'm mad at... Stop it. To a man I was in bed with. Look, Casey, I'm really sorry, I said, rolling over and facing him. He had lots of Irish blood in his veins, and it showed. Dark brown, nearly black eyes, coarse dark brown hair, pale skin, front teeth that overlapped ever so slightly. If his teeth overlapped, I don't think that would make him look good. This woman I worked for has a live-in nanny, and she thinks she's in some kind of trouble. I've got to go up to her place and help her out. Is that Cat the one you work for at Gloss? Yeah, the beautiful but easily bothered Cat Jones. You're welcome to hang around here till I get back. What I wanted to add was, and when I get back, I'll do things to your body that you've never even imagined before. But at that moment, I wasn't feeling very nervy. No, I should go, he said. Can I make a preemptive strike in your bathroom? It'll be quick. Sure, I'm gonna make coffee. Do you want something to eat? A bagel? Not necessary, he said, pulling his arm out from under me so he could swing out of bed. He leaned over the side, reaching for his boxers, and then padded off to the bathroom. Great. There had been the tiniest hint of snippiness in the not necessary, as if he suspected I found an excuse to blow him off. Or maybe you're just overthinking it. Possible, too. Or maybe he was relieved. This way there'd be no awkwardness about how long he was supposed to stay at my place, or whether he should take me out for French toast and mimosas? Meow. I don't know what's wrong with my cat. Or maybe it's just not this morning, and and unless you have some silly rule at your apartment that you can't have a guy over, you can't have people not on your list over for more than 3 nights or something, I don't see what's the problem with him staying there. I forced myself out of bed and stole a look in the mirror above my dresser. I'm fairly attractive, I guess you could say, but look-wise, the morning has never been my finest hour. I'd gotten all my makeup off last night, so there was none of that streaky Bride of Chucky horror, but my short blondish brown hair was bunched up on top of my head, and it looked as though I had a hedgehog sitting there. I swiped at it with a brush a few times until it lay flat, and then pulled on a pair of jeans, a white t-shirt, and a black cotton cardigan. You're not going to put a bra on? I mean, I don't blame you. Bras suck, but really, you're not going to put a bra on. Or panties. We just put pants on and a shirt and a sweater. We didn't put on any underwear. As I headed toward the kitchen, I could hear Casey splashing water in the bathroom. I put on my tea kettle. I make my coffee in a French press, and walked from the living room out onto my terrace to see what the weather had in mind today. I live in the village, Greenwich Village, at the very east end of it. Before it becomes the shabbier East Village, and my view is to the west toward an unseen Hudson River blocked by gray and red and sand-colored buildings and 19 shingled water towers scattered over the rooftops. It was cool, and the sky was smudged with gray. "How'd you get this place again?" Kassie was standing in the doorway, all dressed, ready to split. There was something downright roguish about him, a quality that was kept almost at bay when he dressed in one of his navy banker suits, but came through loud and clear as he stood there in slacks and a shirt rumpled from having been tossed in a heap on the floor in my bedroom. I was torn between the desired swoon and the urge to heed a tiny voice in my head that was going, "Run, Babby, run!" What kind of a statement is that? Why would you want to run from some guy you think is hot? I don't get this. I got divorced, and this was part of the consolation prize. Ah, right. He took 3 steps toward me. "I used your toothbrush, Miss Wiggins." "Then I look forward to using it next," I said. I nearly cringed at the sound of myself saying it. I'd once written an article about a woman with 14 personalities, including an adolescent boy named Danny who liked to set 5-alarm warehouse fires. Okay. Maybe that's what was going on with me. That you have multiple personalities, or you like to set 5 a.m. fires. But he smiled for the first time that morning and leaned forward and kissed me hard on the mouth. "Have a good day." "Oh, I'm sure I will. I'll be scouring New York for the no-show nanny." "I hope she's worth it," he said. "You want to come along?" I asked in a burst of imagination or stupidity. "Can't," he said. "I'm supposed to go sailing today." Avoid anybody named Kate Montgomery. Avoid her. No, her name was Kelly. Whatever. Avoid her like the plague. But that's Seattle, not here. But still, avoid it like the plague. Don't go there. She's stupid and that's a bad place. I walked him to the front of the apartment, flipped the locks on the door, and opened it. He spotted the New York Times laying on the mat and picked it up for me. Then he flashed me his tight little smile with raised eyebrows and turned to go. "No, call you later. No, that was the most awesome sex I've ever had." I felt a monumentary urge to hurl the newspaper at the back of his head, but I just closed the door and begged the gods to keep me from falling hard for him. If you don't want to date him, if it's too much of a problem to date him, that you don't want to actually fall for him, though I don't know why you'd sleep with a guy you didn't love, dump him and go find somebody that you actually like, who treats you like you want to be treated. If you have a problem with how he acts, bring it up. If he's got a problem with you stating your feelings, dump him. He's not worth your time. 12 minutes later, I was in a cab heading uptown. I'd brushed my teeth, made coffee, and then poured it into a styrofoam cup. I tried sipping it in the taxi, but the driver was going too fast, so now I had the cup on the floor, squeezed between my shoes. I don't know why you would do that. I just hold it, but okay. There didn't seem to be anyone on the sidewalks at this hour, just people walking their dogs, cabbies hurrying out of the delis with blue and white disposable coffee cups. The last time I'd been outside on a Sunday this early was about a year ago, and I'd been coming home doing the walk of shame in a black cocktail dress. What's that supposed to mean? At 23rd Street, we turned right, drove all the way to the end and picked up the FDR drive. Is this New York stuff that I would just get if I was in New York? Because right now I'm just kind of clueless. As we sped along the East River, the sun burned a small hole through the clouds, making the river water gleam like steel. I tried to read the front page of the paper, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept wondering if I'd totally blown things with Kassie by tossing him out for the sake of some silly nanny who'd most likely spent the night in a shagathon and would be returning home with a major case of beard burn. How could you have blown... Dude, he used your bathroom. He used your toothbrush. He kissed you. And he left. If you had blown things with him, I'm pretty sure he would have just put his shit on and been like, sorry babe, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Don't call me and I won't call you. And he would have left. I don't think he would have stayed in the apartment of somebody he was still not interested in. I actually met Heidi on several occasions. She was a stunningly pretty and a full girl from Minnesota or Indiana. I don't know why I read that as India. Who'd been imported to take care of Kat's 2-year-old son, Tyler. In fact, I had just seen her on Thursday night when I'd been at Kat's house for a party, and she'd apparently appeared briefly in front of the hallway to rifle through a closet, searching for Tyler's jacket. She had looked through me as if we'd never met before. I was certain that by the time I got to Kat's house, Heidi would have surfaced, and I'd be back in a taxi, spending another $15 on the ride back home. Yeah, that kind of sucks, since taxis are expensive. Probably more expensive in New York, though. Probably not so much here where I live. The only consolation was that I was getting an early start on the day. Besides, I really didn't have much choice but to indulge Kat on this one. She was not only my friend, but also partly responsible for the fantastic little career I had today. At the age of 33, she'd made me a contributing writer to her magazine, Gloss, one of the so-called Seven Sister magazines, which had once specialized in running recipes for chicken dishes made with cream of mushroom soup and profiles of women who'd spent the best parts of their lives trying to get toxic dump sites removed from their towns, but under Kat had metamorphosized into something worthy of its name, a juicy, glossy thing with sexy fashion portfolios, down and dirty guides to making her husband moan in the rack, and fascinating crime stories and human dramas. And I got to write those stories, not the make him moan ones, but the crime stories and human interest dramas, tales about serial killers and vanishing wives and coeds killed and stuffed in 50-gallon drums by the professors they'd been having affairs with. I was grateful to Kat, but it was fair to say she got her money's worth. I was good at what I did. My stories pulled in readers and won awards, and a book publisher just recently decided to package 12 of them together as an anthology. Kat and I met 7 years ago at a little downtown magazine called Get, circulation 75,000, which focused on New York City happenings, the arts, culture, society, scandal, and crime, not necessarily in that order. Up until then, I'd been at newspapers, starting after college at Brown, on the police beat at the Albany Times-Union, and moving on to the Bergen County Record in New Jersey. I loved anything to do with crime, though I'm not sure why. My father died when I was only 12, and my ex-husband once suggested that my fascination with the macabre was born then. I'm more inclined to think it seems from an experience I had as a high school freshman. Someone began leaving nasty notes for me in my desk and in my locker, and rather than just take it, I methodically figured out who the sender was, a girl, and the thrill that came from solving that mystery was totally empowering. Eventually, I realized that magazines would offer me more stylistic freedom than newspapers, and I found my way to New York City and the newly created Get. I met Kat, known as Catherine then, the first day on the job. She was deputy editor, 4 years older than me, and though she supervised mostly the celeb and art stuff, not the gritty pieces I wrote, I got to see her strut her stuff in meetings. She took a liking to me, maybe because I didn't fawn over her like so many people, and over time she began coming into my little office, closing the door and confiding in me about office politics and the complications that came from dating several men at the same time, including a married one with 2 kids. She had recognized me as a secret keeper, blah 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 blah, a rare breed in New York. Once, I even flew to Barbados with her because she wanted to keep Jeff, whom she'd been dating for 4 months, hot and bothered. What did I get out of that? Man, I'm sorry. What did I get out of the relationship? I was totally dazzled by her ambition and total self-assurance and the fearless way she asked for what she wanted. After I had been at Get for just a year, the editor-in-chief resigned in a major stint because the owner was pressing him to kill a snarky short about a friend. The 10 of us remaining on staff stood around in the hall that afternoon, wondering what the hell we should do, until Cass suggested we should all quit too, in a show of solidarity. And so we did. That night we gathered in a bar with the editor, who bought us a round of drinks and told us we'd be talked about in journalism schools for years to come. Maybe not. I wanted to feel giddy and important, but all I could do was wonder if I still had the dental insurance, since I was only halfway through a very nasty root canal treatment. You know, when I've had root canals, knock on wood, they've always went well. Kat, on the other hand, looked preternaturally calm, leaning against the bar with her martini and a cigarette. 3 days later, it was announced that she was the new editor-in-chief of Get. I didn't speak to her for 5 months. Eventually, she wooed me back with some explanation about a magazine being more important than the people who ran it, and by giving me the chance to write even bigger stories. Catherine had become Kat by then, the editor who could seduce any writer into working for her, and knew if an article was good. As someone once wrote in a profile of her, if her nipples got hard when she read it. What? What is with this author and sex? That's the only thing I'm really not liking a whole lot in this is we keep going back to sex somehow. And I'm like, no, sex is fine. It's okay. If you like it, good. If you don't, okay. But why do you have to force it on me every other sentence? She became an it girl in the media world in just over 2 years into her tenure. The owner of Gloss used an electric caliprod to force Dolores Weiler, the 67-year-old editor-in-chief, to gracefully retire, naming Kat as her hot new replacement. Each of the 7 sister magazines, which included Women's Home Journal and Best Home, was close to 100 years old, or long in the tooth in the opinion of some, and if they were going to survive, they needed fresh blood like Kat. She'd extracted a promise from the owner that she could turn the magazine on its head in order to modernize it. Within days, she had offered me a contract to write 8 to 10 human interest or crime stories a year as a freelance writer, and had even given me a tiny office on the premises. I could still write for other places, including travel magazines, a sideline of mine. I'd been yearning for the freedom of a freelance gig would offer over a staff job, and the arrangement thrilled me. We'd kept the friendship up, though like I said, it was kind of a weird one. Occasionally I'd be tempted to keep my distance when the selfish bitch part of her personality reared its ugly head. But then she'd do something fun and amazing, like leave a bag on my desk with an ice pack and a 30-gram jar of caviar. Okay. By now, the taxi has exited the FDR Drive at 96th Street, and from there we headed down 2nd Avenue and then west on 91st Street to Katz's block between Park and Madison, a neighborhood known as Carnegie Hall. I think that's supposed to be Carnegie Hill, not Hall. It was an elegant, tree-lined block of mostly townhouses, some brownstone, some brick, one painted a soft shade of pink. Catty corner from Katz's house was an exclusive private lower school where children were often delivered and picked up in black Lincoln town cars. I paid the driver and climbed out of the cab, careful with my coffee cup. The street was empty except for a man wearing a yellow mac and walking a pudgy westie in the direction of Central Park. A cool light wind began to blow out of nowhere, and there was suddenly a snowfall of pink blossoms from a tree on the edge of the sidewalk. Petals landed on my sweater, my shoes, even in my hair. As I brushed them away, I scanned Katz's townhouse, looking for signs of life. It was a 4-story white brick building with black shutters, erected, she once told me, in the 1880s. The main entrance of the house was on the 2nd floor through a double set of black painted doors at the top of the stoop. On the 1st floor, under the stoop, was a separate entrance to the nanny apartment, which you reached by going down several steps from the sidewalk and walking across a small flagstone courtyard. There was a 7-foot wrought iron gate that opened to a vestibule under the stoop and the door to the apartment. I stepped closer to the house, leaning against the wrought iron fence in the front of the steps of the courtyard area. From there, I could see a faint glow coming from the 2 front windows of Heidi's apartment, creeping out from around the edges of the closed wooden shutters. Ah, so all was well after all. Obviously, the hungover Heidi had been jarred from her slumber while I was being bounced over the potholes of Manhattan. I wondered if I'd at least be offered a croissant before I was sent on my way. I climbed the stoop in the 2nd floor and rang the bell. Kat answered almost instantly, as if she'd been standing there waiting behind the big double doors. She had on black capri pants and an oversized white shirt. Her long, thick blonde hair, which she almost always wore down, was pinned up on top of her head with what appeared to be a set of ivory chopsticks. She was wearing absolutely no makeup, something I'd never witnessed before. Her skin was pale and tired, with faint circles under her blue eyes. And for the first time since knowing her, I noticed that her lips were covered in small pale freckles. "So I take it everything's okay now?" I asked. "What do you mean?" she snapped. "With Heidi, she's here now?" No, she pulled me by my wrist into the foyer and closed the door. Why are you saying that?" "Her lights are on. I assumed she surfaced." "But don't you see? That's the point. Her lights are on. She's supposed to be home, but she's not answering the door." And you don't think that at the last minute she could have decided to spend the night at somebody else's place? 21-year-olds do that sort of thing. She's 22. Whatever. Does she have a boyfriend? She did, but they cooled it a few months ago. Besides, she promised to be here, and like I said, she's always reliable. I thought she got weekends off. Why would you need to see her at 8 on Sunday morning? I need to talk to her about Tyler, just some general stuff. Odd answer, but this didn't seem like the moment to pursue it. Okay, I said, let's open the door to her apartment and see if we can make any sense of this. You think I'm being hysterical for nothing, don't you? She asked. I'm sure everything's fine, but on the other hand, you've got a bad feeling and we need to check things out. That's a safe answer. Yes, I think you're out of your mind, but you won't shut up about it, so we're doing this. Kat lowered her head and pressed the tips of her fingers into her temples. Her nails were the color of pomegranates, and they were as shiny and hard as a lacquered Chinese box. Will you do it? She pleaded softly, taking her hands down. I mean, will you go in the apartment? I'm scared. If there's anything the matter, you'll know what to do. Sure, I said. Why don't you get the key? I followed her through the open double doors on the left wall of the foyer, through the khaki-colored dining room, and then into the kitchen. All white and stainless steel and, though not very big, designed to perfectly suit the demands of a caterer. She yanked open the drawer and began rummaging around for the key. Has Heidi ever shown any signs of having a problem with alcohol? I asked as I waited in the middle of the room. You mean could she be lying down there in an alcohol-induced stupor? Kat said, looking up. I don't have any reason to suspect that she's a big drinker or that she uses drugs, but you don't always see the signs. She has been acting kind of funny lately, distant. When was the last time you actually saw her? On Friday night when I got home from work. Friday? I exclaimed. Thought you said you spoke with her yesterday. I did, but by phone. I had to go to East Hampton yesterday. We're co-sponsoring that film festival at the end of the summer, and I had a planning meeting out there. You went there on a Saturday? I said. East Hampton, the very chic and expensive beach community, was more than a 2-hour drive from the city. It was the only time I could squeeze it in. You know what my life is like. Where is that damn key? Okay, so you come back when, at the end of the day? Actually, this morning. I was too tired to drive back last night, so I got a room out there and left before 6 this morning. Here's the key. I started to turn toward the foyer, but Kat stopped me. This way, she said. There's an entrance downstairs off the library. It made sense that there was an inside door to the nanny's apartment, but I had never seen it. I trailed Kat through the kitchen into the living room, which was at the back of the house. It was a big, square room, almost every inch of it, walls, sofas, chairs, drapes, done in different shades of white and cream. 2 sets of French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking the garden behind the house. Along the right wall, a staircase with a wrought iron banister led down to the library. Kat descended it, with me right behind her. Through the deep red painted library faced the garden too. The second-floor balcony prevented him from getting much sun, and it was dim in there this morning, except for the light from the 2 swivel lamps above the couch. The front wall was lined with bookcases, but as I stepped off the last stair into the room, I saw that a section of the bookcase was actually a 2-foot thick door, which had been pulled out, revealing a plain wooden door behind it. I'd been in the room dozens of times and never known the bookcase was anything more than a bookcase. This is how she gets in and out of the main part of the house? I asked. Yes, mostly, though if she's coming in from the outside, she might use our front door rather than go through her apartment. Who opened the bookcase apart? I asked. I did, to knock on her door, she said. When you open this door, are you right in her apartment? Sort of. There's a little corridor first, then there's her room. There's no bedroom, it's just a sitting room with a pull-out couch. I crossed the room and leaned my left ear against the door. From the other side, I could hear ever so faintly the sound of music. My heart reared up, like a horse that's just smelled smoke wafting into its stall. It was one thing to leave a light on if you were going out, but why would you leave music on, too? Oh, I don't know, maybe because I'll be back soon, or I think that. You know, I've done that before. I'm like, well, I'm just going to step out or something. I'll be back in a few minutes. So I lock the door, I leave the music on, and then I come back and my music's still on. There's no mystery about that. I lifted my arm and pounded 4 times on the door. Heidi, I called. Heidi, are you there? I waited for half a minute, though I was awfully sure that no one was going to open that door. Give me the key, I said, stepping back toward Kat. She let out a nervous sigh as she passed the ring to me with the key stuck out like a little gun. It turns to the right, she said. I put the key in the lock and turned to the right, and tried to turn it, but it resisted. I wiggled the key back and forth a few times and finally tripped the cylinder. I pushed open the door, calling out Heidi's name one more time. The smell walloped me right away, and it was god-awful. It was the sour smell of vomit and the stink of feces and maybe other bad stuff. Fighting the urge to gag, I took 2 steps back from the half-open door and turned toward Kat. Not good, I said. She's been sick, or she's dead. Her hand flew to her mouth and fluttered there like a sparrow. Oh, God, she moaned. I took off my cardigan and wrapped it around my face to prevent the smell from making me do a dry heave. Pushing the door all the way, I took a step into the corridor. As a reporter, I'd seen dead bodies before, mostly in car wrecks, but I didn't know what was waiting for me in Heidi's room, and frankly, I felt scared out of my wits. The corridor was longer than I had imagined, with a small Pullman kitchen to the left and the bathroom to my right. The bathroom was empty, though the light was on, and I spotted a pile of seafoam green towels on the floor covered with dry vomit. Ew! I kept walking with baby steps toward the main room. It was a square space with a door on the far left leading to the hallway, which obviously led to the front door. The couch was in the middle of the room, positioned so that it faced the street and the windows, its back to me. There was only one light on, a stand-up lamp next to the couch, but I could see all the corners of the room with just a glance, and there was no Heidi pausing mid-room in her PJs looking indignant because I'd barged in. The music, some kind of jazz piece, was coming from the radio on a bookshelf against the left wall, and logic told me that smell from hell was emanating from the other side of the couch. This isn't going to be pretty. I moved closer, and halfway around the couch I saw her. She was lying on the floor between the couch and the little trunk used as a coffee table, face up, arms stiffly at her side, almost as if she'd slipped off the couch while lying on it. She was dead. The skin of her face was waxy pale, and her khaki green eyes, open, were cloudy and tannish, as if they'd begun to discolor from being left open so long. She'd gotten sick from something, that was clear. There was vomit crusted on her lips, though strands of her long blonde hair on the front of the white tank top she wore. Everybody's dressed in like a white shirt for some reason. The author likes white shirts, I guess. White tank top she wore above her jeans. I glanced toward the coffee table, looking instinctively for booze or drugs. There was nothing like that, just an empty bottle of Portland spring water, a gold box of Godiva chocolates, and a wet seafoam green towel snaking over a copy of People magazine. My eyes found their way to Heidi's body again. I noticed that the skin along the entire sides of both arms was purplish red. Red? That's weird. Why would they be red? It looked like bruising, but I knew that is where the blood had begun. Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that. Blood had begun to pool after death. She had probably died sometime last night. I glanced toward the little corridor. Kat was in view. Kat, I yelled, pulling the sweater down from my face. Where are you? She leaned her head in the doorway. I'm right here. Is Heidi in there? Yes, she's dead. We need to get help right away. I backed away from the couch almost on tiptoes, careful not to touch anything, because this protagonist has some fucking common sense. She did what exactly motherfucker in the other book should have done. Don't compromise the crime scene once you realize people are fucking dead. Thank you. I backed away from the couch, almost on tiptoes, careful not to touch anything, not even turn off the radio. And then down the hallway, Kat was moaning, "Oh no," over and over again. "We have to call 911, I said. "What happened? How did she die?" she wailed. "I'm not sure. It looks as if she was sick or something. She's puked all over the place. Let's just get upstairs." I guided her back through the library and up the wrought iron staircase, into the living room. As I hurried behind her, I felt an irrational panic, as if I were being chased. I looked back once over my shoulder to be absolutely sure no one was following me. Chapter 3. As soon as we got upstairs to the living room, Kat collapsed on one of the creamy white couches. She looked as if she wanted to cry, but didn't know how to start. I felt oddly detached, as if I'd been switched on to automatic pilot. To be expected. You just witnessed something absolutely horrible. "Kat, I'm sorry," I said, standing in front of her. "This must be terrible for you." "I can't believe it," she exclaimed, the heels of both hands pressed hard against her forehead. "I mean, I was worried something terrible might have happened, but now that it has, I can't even believe it. Do you want me to call 911, or you want to do it? Please, will you?" she pleaded. There was a phone right next to her on the table, a sleek cordless model sitting beside a black lacquered bowl filled with potpourri. It took 4 rings, and when the operator answered, she sounded no nonsense, almost curt, as if I had caught her at a bad time. "Did you try to take her pulse?" she asked after I explained what had happened and a few basic details about Heidi. "No," I told her. "I didn't want to touch the body." She said she would send an ambulance. I knew she would also send the police from the nearest precinct. After setting down the receiver, I filled Kat in on the brief exchange. "What do you think happened to her?" she implored. "You said she was sick? How would that kill her?" "I'm not sure," I said. "Alcohol, drugs, they're both a good possibility. I guess she might have taken too much of something that first made her sick, and then killed her. Or she could have choked on her own vomit. I didn't see signs of anything like that, though. The police and ME will figure it out. They'll look at everything down there. They'll treat it like a crime scene." "Oh, great," Kat said sarcastically. She picked up one of the leopard throw pillows from the end of the couch and hugged it to her chest. "But if it's not drugs, what could it be?" "I really don't know. Maybe she got ill from something she ate. I doubt it's any kind of food allergy. I'm allergic to peanuts, and when you have an allergic reaction, your throat swells up and you start to suffocate." "Botulism? That supposedly makes you sick as hell. But if she was ill through the night, you think she would have called someone. Did she say anything on the phone about not feeling well?" "No," Kat said, and then thought for a second. "I think what she said was, 'I don't feel up to going out tonight.'" "Like she was sick?" "Shit, I don't know." "What kinds of things would she eat for dinner?" She made a face. "It would depend on whether someone was watching." "Meaning?" I asked. "If she was eating with us, she'd have tiny portions, but I think she binged sometimes when she was alone." "You mean she was bulimic?" "No, I don't think so. It's just that she'd play Miss Low-Fat Food Lover around a crowd of people, but later in her room she'd wolf down something big and gooey. I know she stole food sometimes from the fridge." "You're kidding." "I'm making it sound worse than it is. She did live with us, and so technically it was her food too. She was just sneaky about it, which drove Carlota nuts. She'd take the last piece of Tyler's dessert from the fridge, or the leftover chicken, and she'd do it without asking or admitting to it. And maybe even a box of Godiva chocolates." "What do you mean?" "There was a box of candy on her table." "Well, if it's Godiva, it's probably the box someone bought me Thursday night at a party. When I went to look for it later that night, it was gone. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about." She tossed the pillow over to the far end of the couch and stood up. How long will it take the damn ambulance? She asked. I can't stand thinking of her down there like that. Look, Kat, I said, we're going to have to call her family. This would be a good time to do it, before the ambulance. She doesn't have any family, she said. I mean, she did, but they're dead. Her father ran off when she was born, and her mother died when she was 14 or something. She went to live with an aunt after that. Do you have a number for her? Somewhere, I guess. It's upstairs in my office, I think. Why don't you see if you can find it, okay? After she left the room, I just sat there trying to get a handle on what I was feeling. My emotions, I could tell, were on some kind of delayed reaction. Well, no shit, you just, like, oh my god, when my mother died, what the hell was I supposed to do? I had no clue. I just went in my room and I sat there and I typed a message in my live journal and then copy pasted it to everything else, and I just sat there, and then I had to deal with all that crazy bullshit about with the funeral home and the ambulance. That was dumb, but anyway. And I knew it wasn't going to be knocked over by any grief or sadness or horror until everything had a chance to sink in. What I was experiencing was a certain amount of confusion. I had lots more questions for Kat about Heidi, but I would obviously have to wait until later to ask them. My brain was also having a hard time catching up with the reality of the situation. An hour ago I'd been lying in my bed about to be ravished by my wild Irish rogue, and now here I was sitting with a dead body crusted in vomit 1 floor below. I got up and headed to the kitchen to look for caffeine. The morning was going to be crazy and depressing, and I needed something to help me compensate for having had only 5 hours of sleep the night before. There was a Mr. Coffee on the counter, and after rummaging around in the cupboards, I turned up a filter and a bag of Starbucks Special Blend. I filled the machine with 10 cups of water and hit the start button. As the water began to plop into the pitcher, I walked back to the front of the house, into the dining room, and pushed aside the silk curtains in one of the windows. A family of four strolled by in a navy jacket. He in a navy jacket, she in a sleek lavender suit. The 2 little boys all jacketed up too. And I wondered where they could be headed dressed to the nines at this hour. And then I remembered. Sunday. Church. All of a sudden the ambulance came down the street with its sirens making a kind of funny scatawoo-whooping sound. It overshot the house by a few yards, lurched to a stop, and then backed up. I raced to the hallway and flung open the door. 3 EMS workers sprang out almost simultaneously from the driver's seat From the driver's seat, a 50-ish guy, and from the back, a young Hispanic woman and a 20-something white guy with a shaved head. The young guy had an in-charge look, and as he strode toward me, the other 2 began unloading something from the back of the truck. She's in here, I said, pointing toward the apartment, but she's dead. I mean, I didn't take her pulse, but I know she's dead. We can get in this way? He asked, cocking his head toward Heidi's door. I noticed the iron gate and realized I was going to have to open it. I'm going to have to find the keys. Do you want to come through the house first to see the body? Show me the way. As he'd been speaking with me, the other paramedics had pulled out their equipment. One had folded stretcher, and the other had what appeared to be a portable defibrillator. They looked like people who had overpacked for a weekend out of town. The young guy put up his hand like a stop sign. Let me check it out. Stay on the radio, okay? He and I hurried to the stoop steps together, and as we stepped inside the house, Kat was descending the front hall stairs. The ambulance is here, I told her. We're going to have to open the outside entrance to the apartment. You need a key for the iron gate. Right. Do you have it? You do. What? You do. On the key ring. I felt in my pocket where I'd stuffed the keys earlier and pulled them out. getting her to show me the one for the front. She said it also unlocked the front door of the apartment. Is there a chain on the front door? I asked. She looked at me in bewilderment and then, realizing what I meant, nodded her head. I'll show you the body, I said, turning to the paramedic, and then we can unlock the door and the gate. I led him through the house and down the stairs to the library. He asked me a couple of questions as we scurried along. Heidi's age, when I found her, what made me think she was dead and not just unconscious. It's through that door, I told him, pointing. I pulled it closed as I left the room. Okay, just stay here, then, he said. Where's the body? In front of the couch. He opened the door and the Gagdelic smell burst into the library, accompanied by the sound of jazz. I felt the urge to retch, but he seemed unfazed. Well, good thing that kind of a guy is a paramedic, but then again, I guess if you see all kinds of things when you're a paramedic, so. I watched as he made his way down the low corridor and stepped around toward the front of the couch. He lowered himself gingerly on one knee and examined the body for less than a minute. She's dead, he said as he walked back to the corridor to me. I'm pronouncing her dead. He glanced at his watch at 9:32 a.m. At this point, that seemed like the oldest news in the world. What's next? I asked. The police have been notified, right? Yeah, I'll open up the front for them. It shouldn't be very long. Not much going on today. There is a hallway to the left that will get you to the front door, and that opens in the area with the gate, I said, handing him the key ring. Can you tell how long she's been dead? Well, there's not much decomposition yet. The smell's mostly from the vomit, so I'd say she's probably died last night. Any ideas on what killed her? That's for the ME's office to figure out. Obviously feeling no urge to discuss things with me, he returned. Well, you are just a civilian. You're not like a cop or anything. He turned to re-enter the apartment and I went back up the stairs and through the house. I glanced in both the kitchen and dining room for Kat, calling her name twice, but she had disappeared somewhere. Through one of the front windows, I could see that not only had a handful of pedestrians congregated outside to investigate the scene, but there were also 2 uniformed cops. They were double parked in front of the house, talking to the other ambulance crew. I opened the front door and headed down the stoop. Before I even reached the sidewalk, a dark navy car pulled up in front of the house, and out stepped 2 guys who were obviously cops as well, but in regular clothes, probably detectives. With the DOA, the patrol cops generally come first to scope out the situation, but if it's a slow day or a hot case, the desk sergeant will have precinct detectives hightail it over simultaneously. The 4 cops had a short confab with the confab? Why don't you just say they talked to them? It's it's okay if you're using slang in a dialogue scene. It's not okay to use slang in a description of what's going on scene. Because people talk and they think, their personal thoughts that we get to listen in on as readers think slang. But when you're describing stuff to us, even if it's something in first person like this, don't use slang. Don't use slang. That confuses the reader. It's like when I was reading the Sins books and they keep talking about a sloop. I don't know what the fuck a sloop is. No one ever stopped in the description part of the story to explain that a sloop is a type of sailboat. That's all I needed to know. It was like a small description of what a sloop is and what it looks like. But we never got that. So I'm just like, you keep mentioning a sloop. What the fuck is that? The same thing here. What is a confab? Are they being briefed by what the paramedics know? Then you should just say that. They took a moment to speak to the paramedics probably to be debriefed on what they know and before they stepped in to see the situation for themselves. Whatever. A confab with the EMS guys EMS guy who was just emerging from below, and then the two plainclothes guys headed in my direction. The older of the two, a guy in his late 40s, stepped forward to greet me. He was about 5'10" and very compact, like something freeze-dried, with sandy hair and skin that had crinkled around the eyes. In his too tight khaki suit, blue button-down shirt, and red club tie, he looked ready to sell me a mattress at McKay's. When Kat met him, she'd have to fight the urge to tell him that khaki suits were a no-no for Memorial Day. I'm Detective Pete Farley from the 19th Precinct, he said. Bailey Wiggins. I'm a friend of Kat Jones, the woman who owns the house. I came by to help her. It's her nanny who's dead. Is she in there now? The nanny? I realize the nanny's in there. Is the owner here? Yes, she's inside, I said, feeling like a moron. Well, granted, the detective didn't necessarily specify which of the two he was asking about, but considering one person's dead, he probably means the living person. So, yeah, I'd probably feel like a dumbass too. Keep in mind, your brain's still sluggish from the fact that you're decaffeinated, it's super early in the morning, and shit just hit the fan. I half turned toward the steps, expecting him to follow me. We're going to look at the body first, he said. Please tell Miss Jones that we'll want to talk to her in a few minutes. I hurried back to the house, where I encountered Kat gliding down the stairs again. Kat, look, I said, not concealing my annoyance. You've got to stay put now. The police are here, and they're going to want to talk to you in a few minutes after they've looked at the body. I called Jeff. He's leaving right now. He should be here in just over 2 hours, since there won't be any traffic. Good. What about the aunt? Were you able to reach her? There's no answer, not even an answering machine. Well, you can try again a little later. I made some coffee. Why don't I fix you a cup while we wait? We went into the kitchen, and Kat, looking stunned, sat on a stool at the black granite-covered island counter as I filled 2 coffee mugs. No matter how stressful things became at Gloss, no matter who was threatening to sue her or never allow another celebrity client to appear on the cover, Kat stayed in control of the situation, letting loose with charm when that served her best, for turning steely when that was the only strategy that would work. I had never seen her so befuddled. After she had taken a few sips of coffee, she seemed slightly more focused. She rooted through a Fendi purse for her makeup bag, and she applied pressed foundation, blush, and lipstick, the color of brick from a gold channel tube. I filled her in on what the procedure for the day was likely to be. The cops would be there possibly for hours, and would call in both a medical detective from the ME's office and their own crime scene investigators. She needed to be prepared for a long day. This may seem cold-hearted, I added as I set down my coffee mug, but there are some PR concerns to consider there as well. You need to get a hold of a PR agency. The press is going to eat this up. I've called them already, she announced. You're kidding, I said. When? Well, I called Leslie when I was upstairs. She's in town this weekend and going to get in touch with them. She's coming over too to help out. Oh, great. Leslie Stone was the butt-kicking managing editor of Gloss, while the executive editor, Polly Davenport, oversaw the creative side of the magazine. Leslie was the person in charge of all the administrative staff, including managing the budget and expenses, creating schedules, tongue-lashing tongue-lashing underperformers and making sure the magazine got out each month. On work matters, she was also Kat's biggest confidant. So Kat had put her battle plan in place. She wasn't as out of it as I thought. Suddenly there were footsteps, and each of us gave a nervous start as the two detectives walked in through the back door of the kitchen. It was Detective Farley and the other detective, a younger guy with blonde buzz cut, who just might have been the thinnest person I'd ever laid eyes on. Kat introduced herself, and Farley's eyes widened ever so slightly. He hadn't appeared to recognize her name when I gave it on the street, but it appeared he did now, maybe because he had the face to go with it. After declining her offer for coffee, he told her pretty much what I had. Someone from the ME's office would be coming to examine Heidi before she was moved. He said it was standard procedure in home deaths, but especially considering the age of this victim. With Buzzcut perched on one of the counter stools, taking notes, they started with their questions about Heidi: name, age, where was she from, how long had she worked for Kat, what were her responsibilities. Kat's answers were complete, but she never elaborated. Where's the child? Farley asked. Oh, at our weekend home in Connecticut with my husband, Kat said almost defensively, and went through her spiel about why she was in Manhattan this weekend while her family was elsewhere. They appeared to take her explanation in stride, and Farley went on to ask how the body had been discovered. When she explained that I had been the one who actually entered the room and found Heidi, both detectives snapped their heads in unison toward me. I wondered if they could tell by the expression on my face that when Kat had telephoned me, I'd been... Yes, they're mind readers, and they've been secretly watching you all day and night. I wondered if they could tell by the expression on my face that when Kat had telephoned me, I'd been butt naked and seconds away from being shagged. Can I call you Bailey? Farley inquired. Of course, I said. Do me a favor, would you, Bailey? Would you show me exactly how everything unfolded this morning? Detective Hyde can stay with Miss Jones and get some more details about her nanny. He emphasized the word nanny as if it were a word he didn't use much, like flambe or foie gras. Guiding me by the elbow in a thoroughly annoying way, he led me toward the back of the house, aiming for the stairs. I knew that he had intentionally separated me and Kat, and I started to feel this wave of totally irrational guilt and anxiety. Downstairs in the library, the door to Heidi's apartment was now practically closed, and though I could detect movement in the apartment, I couldn't see how many people were in there or what they were doing. But I knew it was either the crime scene investigators or the medical detectives, or both. As we stood by the door, I took Farley verbally through my movements that morning, up to the point of entering Heidi's apartment. Do you want me to retrace my steps in the room for you? I asked, hoping I wasn't going to have to go back in there. Not necessary. Why don't we talk out here? He said, cocking his thumb toward the garden. Without waiting for an endorsement from me, he flipped the lock on one of the French doors, swung it open, and gestured toward the wrought iron garden table, where we both took a seat. From the inside of his suit jacket, he pulled his own steno pad and pencil and jotted down a few more notes before asking me a question. His fingers were short and stubby, like a row of cocktail wingers. So, as you were saying, Farley said, you unlocked the door and walked in the room. Uh-huh. And I could tell from the smell something wasn't right, I explained. I walked around the couch, and then I saw her. The day had not managed to get much warmer since I had left my apartment, and I folded my arms around my chest for warmth. Did you move or touch the body when you were in the room? No, I did not, I said. Why was I sounding so defensive? Why do you sound defensive when you're confirming something for a detective? I don't get... Stop. Why are you so easily freaked out by stupid things? Why are you so freaked out by dumb things? You sure about that, Bailey? No, I mean, yes, I'm sure. No, I didn't touch her. You didn't look for vital signs, take a pulse, to see if she might still be alive? No, it was very obvious she was dead. Besides, I don't know how she died, and I knew it was important not to touch the body. It sounds like you kept a pretty cool head through all of this, he said, the skin around his eyes crinkling as he flashed a tight smile. His tone didn't make it sound like the world's greatest compliment. Well, I'm a reporter, I said. It was going to come out sooner or later, so it seemed best to get it on the table now. Oh, really? What kind of stories? Human interest, crime stuff. In fact, I read a lot for Gloss Cat Jones magazine. Maybe that explains why I don't recognize your name. I generally stick with the men's magazines, if you know what I mean. So tell me what you thought when you saw the body. If you're a reporter, you're obviously observant. Did you suspect foul play of some kind? Foul play? Was that what he was thinking? You mean, did I think someone had done something to her? No, I assumed she became violently ill for some reason. And why was that? Well, there was vomit all over, and she was on the floor. Did Miss Jones come in the room with you at any point? No, she stayed in the library. Had you met the young woman before? A few times, yes, though I've worked with Cat. We're friends, too, and I've seen Heidi around the house. He didn't remove his pale blue eyes from me while I answered, but when I was done, he took a second to jot down what I said. As he wrote, the right shoulder of his too tight khaki suit strained at the seam. She a nice kid? He asked. She was pleasant to me, and I think Cat's son liked her a lot, but I really didn't know her at all. Was she doing a good job as a nanny? Was Miss Jones happy with her, as far as I know? Was anyone in the house with the nanny this weekend? I paused for a moment. I believe she was alone. You hesitated for a second, Bailey. So? I thought for a moment to make sure I could answer your questions correctly, dumbass. He said, cocking his head. Well, there's a housekeeper, Carlota. She works mainly during the week, but I believe she sometimes comes in on the weekend. From down the block I could hear church bells begin to purl, and then, closer by, the whistle of a tea kettle from an open window. And as far as you know, Mr. Jones wasn't around at all. From what Cat said, no. His name is Henderson, by the way, Jeff Henderson. What about a boyfriend? He asked. I beg your pardon? I said, startled. It was a split second before I realized he was talking about Heidi. Did she have a boyfriend as far as you know? I believe she had one at some point, but Cat said they were cooling it. You need to ask her about that. Did the nanny have any health problems? Was her health? No, I'm sorry, but I barely knew her. Cat would know all this. There we go. Wait. I accidentally... There we are. Yeah, I accidentally skipped a page. He just stared at me, his pale eyes watering slightly. His look suggested that I'd be smart not to cut him off like that again. Why would he be a giant asshole? You just told him what he needed to know. You live in the city? He asked after an uncomfortable moment. Yes, in the village. Why do you think Miss Jones called you to come up here? She was nervous, I think. Worried. Heidi's apparently always been very reliable, and so Cat became alarmed when she didn't open the door. No, what I mean is, why you in particular? We've known each other for a long time. I'm the kind of friend she can call at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. What was her demeanor like when you arrived? Like I said, she was worried, very worried. She didn't want to go in the room herself. I think she was just too scared to. Can I ask you something, Bailey? Between the two of us, Did that seem funny to you, her not wanting to go in alone? No, not at all. She talked about the possibility of drugs or alcohol or even suicide, and Kat didn't want to face it all by herself. Suicide? Had Heidi been depressed? No. I mean, not that I know of. My point was simply that something seemed off, and as far as Kat knew, it could have been one of any number of things, or nothing. She just didn't know. He didn't say anything else, just held my gaze momentarily before rising from the table. For now, the interrogation appeared to be over. He asked for my phone number and address, jotting them down in the notebook and telling me he might need to get in touch with me in the next couple of days. He flipped the cover of the steno pad back over with one hand and led me back upstairs, where he collected Buzzcut and announced that they were going back downstairs. As soon as they were out of earshot, Kat grabbed a hold of my sleeve. Am I being paranoid, she asked, or did they deliberately separate us? Celebrate us? Yes. Yes, they're celebrating you. Yay, celebrate! You're not being paranoid, I said as I poured myself more coffee. That's exactly what they did. That's beautiful, she said sarcastically, throwing back her head. Most of the hair had been held up with chopsticks, was down now, cascading around her face. I suppose that means they think we're hiding something and they want to catch us in a lie. No, it doesn't mean that. Cops interview bystanders and witnesses separately because if they're in the same room, they often unconsciously try to make their versions fit together. Look, I haven't had a chance to say this yet, Bailey, but I don't know how I could have coped today without you. I'm glad I came. Your instincts turned out to be totally valid. There was something I wanted to ask Kat, and this finally seemed like the right moment. But before I could, the doorbell rang. She went off to answer it, and a minute later Leslie Stone was striding through the kitchen. 38 years old, with brown eyes and thick brown hair, worn in a china chop. Leslie was considered attractive, but personally I didn't get it. Her nostrils were as big as kidney beans, and when I looked at her, I always felt as if I were face to face with a fruit bat. That's not very flattering. Today she was all decked out in beige, rayoni pantsuit and strappy sandals, looking as if she'd been dragged away from a brunch in Santa Barbara. I hated being catty at times like this, but I noticed that she had packed on some pounds since the last time I had paid close attention to her thighs. Isn't this like the worst time to pay attention to how fat or skinny somebody is? Yeah. My problem was that I just didn't like Leslie, which is fine. They're just people that for some reason you don't like. As a freelancer, I was fairly immune to her bullying, but whenever possible, she harassed me about deadlines and my travel expenses. Her husband had made a killing in the stock market, a few years back and then crashed out, and the only reason she worked, people claimed, was that she loved being in charge and telling people what to do. Oh, cashed out, not crashed out. He cashed out and got a shit ton of money. Start from the beginning, she demanded as she parked herself on one of the kitchen bar stools. The look she shot me registered irritation, as if I must be partly to blame for the mess. Kat took her through everything that had happened. While they talked, I excused myself and headed off to the powder room that was tucked under the hall stairs. I took my time, washing my hands, splashing water in my face, putting on some blush and lip gloss I found in a basket in the cabinet under the sink. Why would you do that? You don't know where that's been. What if the nanny lady was sick and used that? Don't do that. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked about as bad as I felt, tired and drained and wigged out from the whole experience. How had the morning turned out this way? What could possibly have killed Heidi? And where was Kassie now, I wondered. Because that's the most important thing. Where's the guy I'm worried about having a commitment with, because I don't think he wants a commitment with me, maybe just to have sex. But I didn't get to have sex with him this morning. And so now I'm thinking that he doesn't want to ever come see me or have sex with me again. That's not fucking important. When I emerged from the bathroom, I found that two young and very blonde women from the PR agency had arrived, and they launched into a long discussion with Kat and Leslie about how to handle the inevitable press scrutiny, eventually including on speakerphone the head of the agency, who was safely out of town for the weekend. Lunch was ordered. We had drawn the drapes in the dining room, but I took a peek out occasionally. The ambulance had departed, but now there were other vehicles parked outside, including a van from the MEs, and people were trapezing in and out of the apartment below. There were gawkers outside too, a never-changing cluster on the sidewalk. So far, no TV news trucks. Really? From say 8:30 or no, say from 9 to noon, no TV trucks? Really? No news? That seems weird. At about 12:30, Jeff turned up, alone, having dropped off Tyler, he said, with friends in the city. He had his hip fashion photographer thing going. Green cargo pants, white t-shirt. What is with all the white t-shirts? V-neck caramel sweater, but he looked extremely distressed and white as ghost. He and Kat hugged, as she clung to him even when he was ready to let go. He wanted to know everything, from start to finish, and she took him off to the kitchen. Jeff. He was without qualification an absolute hunk, about 6'1" and amazingly buff. He had hazel eyes, a full, sensuous mouth with a small cleft in the middle of his lower lip, and slightly wavy brown hair, worn longish, just lower than his chin, and generally tucked behind his ears. As a photographer, he specialized in fashion as far as I knew for several years on his own. His career was in high gear. He didn't have Kat's level of success, but then again, he was 6 years younger than her. As for their marriage, it appeared solid, despite predictions to the contrary from people who thought she couldn't last with a guy who had never read a novel all the way through. But Kat had her fill of moody Wall Street millionaires and prickly Renaissance men. What she desired, she told me, was a guy who did one thing extremely well and wanted to spend the rest of his time with her, who was easy to be with and never made her walk on eggshells, who liked massaging the kinks out of the back of her neck, and who knew how to make the sex so good that the neighbors would wonder some nights if they should phone the police. Okay, that's strange, but okay. Jeff was that man. Though I liked him enough, things had always been slightly awkward between the two of us, maybe because I found his looks so disconcerting. At about 2, I finally decided I better beat it. I felt bad for Kat because of the jam she was in, and I wanted to help her. I also wanted to be in on the action, but I was beginning to feel like a fifth wheel. Kat preferred what you might call a I'm gonna fail at this. A compartmentalization. Fuck this word. Approach to her friendship. We all serve specific needs, with no one person responsible for too much. Right now, Kat was preoccupied with damage control, which wasn't one of my specialties. It would have been helpful to have a chance to talk to Jeff before I left, but Leslie was currently monopolizing him. I figured I'd do better leaving now and calling or coming back later. I told Kat I was splitting and said to call me if she needed me. picking at a pasta salad was one of the blonde spin doctors yammering away next to her. She acknowledged my departure in a state of distraction. I found my sweater on the hall table, though I didn't recall leaving it there. As I started to open the front door, Jeff stepped out into the hallway. "You okay?" he asked, with just a trace of his Tennessee roots. "Cat told me how you found the body. I'm hanging in there, but what about you? This must be very sad for you." It was hard to tell, though, exactly what he was feeling. He looked more agitated than anything else. "Of course," he said quickly. "And this is going to be awful for Tyler. What do we tell him, for God's sake?" As I started to ask him another question, one of the PR babes popped her head out into the hall. "I wouldn't hold that door open if I were you," she chided me. Jeff gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and I hurried away down the steps. A TV news van was attempting to park out front, which would give me time to outdistance anyone climbing out of it. But a young guy on the sidewalk with tape recorder and mic descended on me. I sprinted away toward Park Avenue, where I flagged down a taxi. As soon as I collapsed into the back seat, I realized that my head ached, my back and legs ached, my brain ached too. There were so many unanswered questions about Heidi's death. What had made her sick? Was she a drug user? And had she been alone last night? Why hadn't she called anyone once she began to get violently ill? I also had questions for Kat, things that had been bugging me all morning. Why had she spent the weekend in the Hamptons while her husband was up at their country home? Why had she needed to see Heidi at the crack of dawn on Sunday? And what made her so terribly certain that something bad had happened? I was anxious to hear the answers to those questions, but the thought of them scared me. Something told me that over the next few days, Kat's life was going to become a big, ugly mess. And then there's chapter 4. So, what do I think about this book? I think I will keep reading and find out what happens. You notice that unlike with the previous books I've had on the show, I didn't get really all that mad or upset. Yeah, some dumb things happened. Some things that obviously need to be fixed. Like using the slang to describe things instead of actually describing things. A weird focus on sex that seems a little much, but once the mystery started, was mostly dropped. One or two instances were like, "What about my man?" And I'm just like, "Oh, for the love of God." But yeah, solid storytelling and writing. A little long-winded to describe her relationship with Kat, but it's better than what we got in the sailing books. This actually sets up, her relationship with Kat and why it would be of her personal interest as well as her career interest to investigate what's going on and what happened. So I am interested in continuing the story and finding out what happened to the nanny. And, clearly, it's already obvious somebody probably poisoned the chocolate, and the nanny didn't know when she stole it. And while she was eating it, she got sick, and probably didn't think it was somebody had poisoned the chocolate. And so she probably figured she's just sick, and she'd lay down on the couch until she got better. And if what Kat says is true about everybody being away from the house, probably wasn't anybody home for her to get in contact with. And even if she could get in contact with them, everybody's like hours away. So it would be pretty much impossible to. And of course, as things go, if she was secretly having an affair with somebody or something like that, a lot of people probably would have been very angry at her or very, at least unhappy, and she probably wouldn't have called for anybody anyway. She probably, that's something I would do. I'm feeling terrible. I'm going to go lay down on the couch or the bed or something and maybe take a nap or whatever, and hopefully I'll wake up and I'll feel better. When I wake up, I'll feel better. So, I mean, that part is obvious. So, my final thoughts on If Looks Could Kill, I'm going to keep reading it because I'm interested in where it goes. It hasn't made me horribly angry with what I've already mentioned. Could use a little bit of improvement, but it's not too much in my face that I can look past it when it's bound to come up again in the book. I would just say maybe a little adjustment on how long the chapters are and when we end a chapter and start a chapter. Maybe tweak that just a little bit, because that just seems more like if I just took the chapter titles away, like that whole thing just could have been the same chapter. It felt to me. And I think that's basically all I can really say is right now, with having read 3 chapters, I could recommend you pick up this book if it sounds interesting to you and you want to give it a read. It just seems a little bit dry, but I did find myself laughing at some of the things that the protagonist said or thought. So, because you would do those kind of things, like the cop asking her where Kat was, but she didn't realize the officer was talking about Kat. So she's like, the nanny? And then she's like, and then I immediately felt stupid because obviously he's talking about Kat. You would do that. We've done dumb things when it was obvious it was that the person was talking about the other thing. We've done that. We can relate to that. The character set up, we have a personality sort of for her. We already have it set up as to why she is friends with this person. It seems more like a business friendship as opposed to a legitimate friendship, but there's still something of like a friendship there. And it makes sense why she would be involved in an investigation. The cops didn't seem out of character. One guy was kind of an asshole, but every police officer, like every person, has a different personality, has different things happen in his career. Different ways to cope or ask questions or interview somebody, and things like that. A little annoyed at that older cop kind of being a dick, but like I said, different cops have different strategies, have different, just like any other person, have different tolerance for, bullshit or anything, but nobody was intentionally being douche. I appreciate that, considering I just came off the stupid sailing books, and now I have to read the very last sailing book, and I don't want to, because I know it's gonna suck, and I'm going to be very angry. So that was If Looks Could Kill by Kate White. Pick it up if you found it interesting. I'm gonna keep reading, and I guess once I'm done with the book, I'll give a final thought video, do like an update, Red Knot update or something, and tell you how the book ends. Well, not how the book ends, but what I thought of the book as a whole, if it still met what I thought of reading initially 3 chapters of it. So, I'm Caleb, and this has been Red Knot. Thank you for listening. Bye! Give me some recommendation for books, because I'll be trading the ones I don't like in soon.